should we get started? We got the quorum. So, okay, I'm going to call the meeting of Middleton Community Development Authority for June 22nd, 2022 to order. And the first item is the roll call. Abby.
Furlong,
Present.
Olson,
Here.
Oakes,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
Weber. Not yet. And Lore is absent. Brar is present.
Okay, all right. So the next item is the approval of the minutes. That the minutes for May 12th, 2022.
I'd make a motion to approve the minutes from May 12th, 2022.
Need a second? I will go ahead and
It's Katie.
Katie will second it.
Mhm.
Any changes that all look good to me? So any questions or comments? Otherwise, all those in favor of the approval of the minutes for Community Development Authority minutes for May 12, 2022, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We are on to the agenda items. Number one is the review of the 2022 Sustainable City Plan Draft, referral from Sustainability Committee. So, Abby, how do you want to handle it?
Yeah, so I included a version in your packet that just had our planning staff's comments. These are going, we prepared these for the Plan Commission originally, and the Plan Commission is going to review them at their meeting tomorrow evening. Kieran sent me some of his comments in advance of the meeting, so I think maybe the best way to handle this, since you all haven't probably had a chance to look at those, would just be to go through this document and for Kieran to highlight some of the points that he made here.
Okay, Karen, go ahead. So now Belinda joined Abby, so you probably know.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
So I don't have control, Abby. If you want to scroll down, and I'll just yell out stop when it's overall. By the way, very good, and I think it's It's just a general comment. It matches up obviously with the comprehensive plan and other things I've seen from the Sustainability Committee as well. So I think that's positive. All right, keep going. I think my first comment's on page 4. I think public engagement, by the way, is going to be an important part of it. So there was one question here. I think someone from the staff had obviously raised the alarm of, man, if we have to try and track all of this and quantify how the city is reducing its GHG emissions, that's going to be really challenging. They're not wrong. But there are increasingly software out there now, for example, small food brands who are trying to figure out the carbon footprint of their food product, like their ingredients and so on. I've looked at a few of those companies myself in my day job. So I think if there's nothing available now, keep a watching space. I think this is going to be an area where there will be third-party software that you can use. It won't be as precise as using a life cycle assessment consultant or having a city staffer do it completely, but it's going to be directionally good enough. And I think oftentimes with LCAs, you end up with, decimal point precision more than accuracy, right? Because you kind of, oh, we're doing the sums, but it's actually, well, what are your assumptions going in? So I think that will be enough. So that was just one comment on that. And I think there's something else later where I kind of mirror that comment again as well. Energy obviously is talked about here as the main area where the city itself will be able to reduce its consumption. There was one in here about Energy Plan 5 at bottom of page 6, I think, where it was, oh yeah, sorry, there was the insulation. Yeah, this energy efficiency program that you're doing, where was this, partner with Dane County. Does that include upgrading these rental properties and so on for insulation, windows and so on as well? Because I know a lot of them are like, hey, let's get a more efficient furnace in that house. But that's just sending heat into the atmosphere again if we're not actually insulating the properties and so on. Do you know?
Yes, it does include insulation around windows and other things like that.
Good, because I think that's one of the areas where it's not very glamorous or sexy, but it's one of the areas where there's huge benefits to be made in a climate like Wisconsin, where it's cold in the winter and hot in the summer. So,
Yep.
Okay, so that was that comment. The other one was, down at the bottom of page 6, I think the most important action to compete is this benchmarking. Again, I think just trying to find if there's a software tool that would do that, that would be important as well. I think that's the comment right above there. Yep. So then the other one was just transportation is in here. It's a very short section, partly because maybe it's just rehashing some of the things which are in here in the greenhouse gases, but the city itself transitioning from internal combustion engines to electric is one thing, as more residents do so as well. But I think, there needs to be a more holistic thinking. It's not just about moving from internal combustion motor vehicles to electric motor vehicles. It's also, well, is moving a large ton of metal and plastic around with one person inside the best way of ensuring people are moving around? And then it dovetails in with the denser housing and so on as well, and the city's approach to that, if you like, within the downtown area, which obviously is a CDA remit. So I think just ensuring that the ways to reduce vehicle emissions is not just electrifying, it's also moving away from the vehicles. So that was one kind of comment that I think, obviously PBT and sustainability are probably all over that as already as well. Next comment that I had was, let's see. Actually, one thing was around this covenants against solar. Is that an aesthetic thing, Abby? Do you know? There was a comment from one of the staffers' reviews.
Yes, there are some neighborhoods in the community that have their own private covenants, not enforced by the city, and in some cases not even tracked by the city, where they have covenants restricting solar.
And is that specifically restricting solar, or just more restricting you can't change the outward aesthetic appearance of the home and so on?
Specifically restricting solar.
Okay. I guess this will be part of the public engagement, is to find out why that is and see if we can convince them, whoever is in charge of the covenant in the homeowners association, to change it. When I lived in San Diego, there was something similar on bike paths in Coronado, which is a very well-to-do beach community. And it was just, there was these emotional arguments against putting paint on the road that just seemed, I don't know where they were coming from, but I think aesthetics and people being resistant to change were the main part of it. All right, let's see what else we got. Oh, composting, I think. Was it composting or carbon sink? And we're trying to get to my next quote. Yeah, carbon sink, which is in section 2, greenhouse gas emissions. So I think that's one that it probably needs to be included a lot in the public engagement. So I think most residents seem to be aware now of the issue of stormwater runoff and the need to retain water on the property and let it soak back into the ground. You go back 15, 20 years, I'm sure that wasn't the case, right? So I think just educating or put outreach to people around, hey, the more long-lived plants that you have on your property, perennials and trees and so on, the more they're acting as a carbon sink. And I think that will be one thing to include in the messaging and so on as well. All right, then I think my next comment is around section 5 in transportation. So this was particularly light, and I'm not sure if that was intentional or if folks kind of have run out of steam by the time they got to this, because it was already covered in energy and greenhouse gas emissions. But again, there's so many ways that transportation impacts all of above, right? Energy usage, greenhouse gas emissions, and so on. That I think, we really want to think around, are there ways we can just nudge people in the right direction by disincentivizing single vehicle, like especially single occupant motor vehicle usage. And a lot of that will come down to providing alternatives, realistic alternatives. Like right now, if I was back commuting to the university, I could no longer do it by bus, which was viable 3 years ago, right? There's only one bus route now and it goes all up around North Lake and everything else. So, making sure there's viable alternatives to that, I think would be really, really important. And there's ample data out there showing that when you've got good access to, a light rail system or something else, it increases property values when people have those options as well, or when you have a walkable community, walkability scores and so on, which would be good for the city, right? Tax rates, our tax revenues will go up if property values go up. Then there's there's the intersection with food and sustainability and greenhouse gases. I'm not sure if everyone is fully aware of this, but food waste into landfill generates methane, which there's a reference in here around it being 26 times more potent. That's over a longer time frame. Shorter time frame, it's even higher than that. So anything we can do to get food waste out of the trash cans will be a really, really good thing. And that will be a huge bang for the buck for the city in terms of city hitting its targets. So a composting scheme is one way. Also encouraging more at-home composting would be a good way. And that ties back to section 3, I think, which is food. And, if we can encourage gardening and so on as well as a way, gardeners inherently want to compost because you want to bring those nutrients back to the garden as much as possible as well. But yeah, the landfill methane, I'm not sure if everyone else on the call is aware of that, but just how potent that is. And if we can just get food waste out of trash cans, that's a huge win. That's pretty straightforward. And it goes along with, hey, less weight to go into the trash trucks. So the city bill is lower, less, gasoline or diesel being used, less trucks on the streets, all of those kind of things all add up as well. Was that it? I think that was my last comment as well there, Abby. But overall, yeah, I thought it was, a good plan. Obviously, it's kind of a document around what you're going to do, what the city's going to do. So I think that's positive. But I think we don't want to, there was stuff in there around, microgrids and so on. Sometimes we can get all excited about, oh, that's cool technology, let's use that. And we don't look at the less sexy, but right in front of you solutions like food waste out of landfill and better insulation in buildings, for example, right?
Well, it's a very ambitious plan, and I think Sustainability Committee has done a great job. And their point that the committee, just the Sustainability Committee can't do it all, is really valid. And one of the things which I have seen, whether it's at the city or a company, so if you have some sort of a deadline, timeline, then things do work. So I know we got the plan for placement of the vehicles, 5-year plan, but I think if we have something for the other areas as well, that will make a difference. Your point on composting is really great, and we also know its impact, but we have really toyed around or talked about it for a long time. And I know the Madison had a pilot project, so there are a lot of challenges, but I guess we still have to find ways to address them. In this case, I guess the education, educating the people that or the homeowners, I don't think it's going to happen quite that readily in apartments that compost it. So I know we have been doing it for years, but I don't know if everybody does. So the next one is Kathy Olson and then Kari Oaks. Kathy, go ahead.
Okay, Abby, I saw you called out a couple different times when they were mentioning financial incentives and incentivizing things, that is, you're right, that's very tricky based on what we have available for funds. And if grants are available for some of these things, that would be wonderful. One thing, I'm looking at this through the lens of the CDA, and we're talking about EV charging stations, and we own 3 parking lots in the area. And I think the one on Terrace does have an EV charging, isn't that right, Abby? On Terrace?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah,
But
we do.
the one by the fire station doesn't, and the one downtown, I don't think has that yet. And I don't know, with the way we're still working on community campus plan if we don't know what the parking situation will be downtown. But if an opportunity ever presented itself at the fire station parking lot across University, it might be something that we'd want to be in line to have an EV charging station there. The other thing that there were no costs associated with any of this, so it's not easy to say, oh, this is a great plan without knowing what your cost, what the cost versus the reward, payback is. When it talked about city-owned buildings having to do energy benchmarking, how much that would cost, because like the senior center, which the CDA owns, what would that cost? And would it be, not knowing again what the community campus plan is going to end up with, is that something we want to move forward with? So those were the comments I had on this.
Okay, excellent, Kathy. And next one is Kari, and then Karen, and then Katie.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think, first of all, I want to say I really appreciate Karen's expertise and careful read of this, and the work that the committee did. This is pretty impressive document, ambitious, but it really does a great 360. And Karen, in particular, you're calling out the transportation section as being very brief and talking about some alternatives and moving away from one person and one vehicle with, 4 wheels as the model. Again, thinking about the CDA and its intersection with other committees and other work that's being done. I just want to, again, say that we have a model in the tourism trolley that could serve as a really effective collector for downtown residents and just to really serve Middleton as a whole with what looks to be a radically reconfigured Madison Metro transportation scheme. And I don't have a solution or dollars to go with that, but I just never want to let the opportunity pass to mention that as a possible partial solution.
Thank you, Kari. Karen, and then Katie.
Yeah, and just respond. I wanted to respond to Kathy's comment, then Katie as well, or to Kari's comment as well. The EV charging stations. There's something in Wisconsin. I think it's one of these obscure legislation where nobody can sell electricity except the publicly regulated utilities, I think. But is it possible? I mean, the ones that we currently have, do we generate revenue from those? And is it possible that this might be another way of using some CDA investment to generate a revenue stream for the city, right? So if there's a way to do a, fee for charging type stuff, I think that would be really something useful for the CDA as well. So that's a question. I don't know, Abby, if you have an immediate comment on that, or if you know the answer.
Yeah, I do. Pretty high level though. So the ones that are behind the library on the Terrace Avenue parking lot, those are owned, operated, and maintained by MG&E. So we don't really have any say in that. But
Right.
The city does own one that is across from Middleton Station Apartments near Capitol Brewery on Terrace Avenue. And that one, we do get a small, tiny amount of revenue. I think we just kept the rates in line with what MG&E was charging for their public charging station. So it's very minimal, but it doesn't even pay for the cost to subscribe to the system. It's charge point. So it's like, we have to be able, if we want to be on their network for somebody who's looking for a charging station, we have to have a subscription, and the amount of revenue doesn't even cover that cost.
Wow. Okay.
But it could increase, over time as they become more in demand and more people are driving EVs. Eventually it could get there. Right.
But that would be something to look into as I was expecting it to be one of these kind of like solar panels on your roof, 15, 20 year payback type things anyway. Yeah. But if that one is already not even clear, washing its face right now, it's not a revenue scheme. And then to Kari's point around a trolley, like a commuter trolley, some other way that we can just demonstrate. We've got this nice compact downtown in that the CDA territory is, if you like, and to be able to come up with some ways of encouraging other alternatives. A commuter bus might be one example, right? And I know, I'm not sure which city committees or responsibilities that would overlap with, obviously PBT being one. Would it be seen as being competitive to Madison Metro? Well, maybe that might be a good thing, right? To basically say, it's not really working out. I know that they've been jacking up what City of Middleton needs to pay them, but I'm not sure the service is keeping track with that. And maybe Katie's going to comment on that. So I'll yield the floor.
Thank you, Karen. I know Kathy might like to comment with that one. We had this ad hoc transit committee had, we went through those, and we did work with the Madison Metro. So I think we have come up with at least somewhat of a solution. We will evaluate it after a year, then we see where we need to go. And Katie?
Thanks. Kieran, I don't have your answer, I'm sorry, but I would like to echo Kari's vote to using the trolleys whenever we can. I think, Kari, you and I walked over to the trolleys after the bus tour in the spring, and we wanted to make sure that it was ADA compatible, and it is. There's a lift on it. I'd love to see us own that and use it so people could park maybe away from the downtown and come in on a trolley. And then as far as charging stations, I'm not remembering exactly, and so Abby, you probably know this, but didn't Kelly Hilliard, the city sustainability director, didn't she get money, either a grant or the ARPA funds for another charging station?
Yes.
And I love Kathy's idea of having it over by the fire station. And I'm wondering if that sort of corner, weird sized, too small piece of property that we own would be a good spot for the charging station.
That's a good idea. I was just walking Matt Stroh-Snyder, our downtown marketing and event coordinator, around the downtown, and I flagged that piece of property for him. And I was like, we really should do something with this because it looks bad. It's gravel. At least landscape it or something in the interim, because we don't know how long that property is going to sit there. But I hadn't thought about using it for a charging station. In terms of the question about your grant question, so there is a bipartisan infrastructure bill, and the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the county, had some funds that were passed down, and they rolled out a grant opportunity through this federal funding that would support the city converting some of our fleet vehicles to electric, as well as the infrastructure that we would need to be able to charge these vehicles. And the way that we submitted the grant was for 3 locations. One was the Municipal Operations Center. One was the Terrace Avenue parking lot, but it would be dedicated for a city vehicle. It wouldn't be publicly used, because like we felt that it wouldn't be fair for us to use MG&Es and tie it up when that's really intended for the public. And then the third was at the police station, because we need that infrastructure to be able to convert our own fleet. I'm pretty sure that grant was, I believe that grant was written by Daphne Shu in our department, working with Kelly Hilliard and Brad Hopwood, who's our operations manager. And I'm 90% sure that that is the grant that we recently heard from the MPO that they didn't go through some process requirement, some step that was required to allocate the funding. And so there's going to be a delay on us getting those funds now. And I think it might be like up to a year delay. But I have to admit, our department has gotten a lot of grants lately. Our small staff has over $5 million in grants that we're managing. And so I might be confusing that EV grant with another one, but I'm pretty sure that we have a bit of a delay on it. I don't know, but it might be possible for us to shift one of those charging stations to the fire department. I'm not sure.
Awesome job on the grants. Wow.
But Abby, you remember that city has allocated some of the capital funds for putting those charging stations at the municipal operations center. I don't know if it includes the police stations. I think it does include the police station as well. So
Yeah,
I think it be happening this year itself, right?
That's where it gets a little complicated now, because so we use those funds that the city allocated as the grant match. That's how we were able to secure the grant funding, is because we said, we're gonna spend this much, which we had already gotten approval for in order to like double our, get more bang for the buck. But now that there's a delay, I think that we may, and again, I'm speaking a little out of turn here because we need to put something together and bring it to the council, but I think we may have to ask the council's permission to delay expenditure of those other funds, because that's what we're using for our match. And we don't want to give up the grant opportunity.
So how about there was there was some money left over from those solar projects. So were we not going to use that money as well?
Yes, we were. That's the funding that was the council allocated
Okay.
toward the EV conversion. Yep, that's
Okay.
correct.
Belinda, you had your hand up, and then Kathy, and then Karen.
This week I'm actually in Phoenix, and I was wondering if there's been considerations of different modes of transportation in the city for Middleton. So for example, here in Phoenix, they use electrically charged scooters, and they are heavily used. And, if you're going to look into converting that little parking lot into it, so maybe that would also be another great place to have an alternate means of transportation for people to get around downtown Middleton. But people seem to really love it here. So.
Wow. Yeah, I know there was one group. We have been communicating with them, and so I sent that information to Abby. So we were going to further. Abby, you can tell me where we are with that. So.
Yeah, that was Bird Scooter that had reached out to Mayor Brar and asked about expanding their network to Middleton. We talked with the city of Madison about their efforts, and we kind of we felt that it would be beneficial if we worked with the other communities and kind of had a similar policy for all the communities. And those scooters haven't yet made it to Dane County. We did get a little bit further along with the electric assist bicycles with B-Cycle. That's been a budget request a couple of times now, but the city has decided not to allocate funding. B-Cycle has expanded now to Fitchburg, Monona, and they're well embedded in Madison now. And the MPO did give Fitchburg some funding for B-Cycle to expand into the city of Fitchburg. They have another funding cycle in the fall, and if we decided we wanted to apply to try to get the B-Cycle bikes in Middleton, I think we probably could be successful in getting some funding for that.
Thank you, Abby. Next one is Kathy, and then Karen.
Yeah, Katie, I really like the idea of that small lot on University and Parmenter. It's so visible that it would really be a big benefit to have it there. I also wanted to mention that at the last tourism meeting, the contract for the trolley was before us, and they decided not to renew that contract at this time. And then about the ad hoc circulator bus, we had met with just a variety of different people, from moms, the schools, the chamber, tourism, to discuss it. And the thought was, with the new routes that are being proposed, there was a lot of the good things they said, because it's going to be so much more regular, that we were going to and the addition of it, was it the Z route, or what was the one that was going through the middle as an addition? But they thought that might be better than what we had, so they wanted to watch what the ridership was and give us a test before we move forward any further with an ad hoc circulator. So thank you.
Thanks.
Karen?
Yes, so I'm glad you mentioned tourism, Kathy, because definitely, look, that's a prime location, right across from our good neighbor sign and everything as well. I know there's a Midwest regional partnership between 5 states, so Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, I think Minnesota, and I'm not sure, maybe Indiana probably, who are working on EV charging stations along interstate and so on as well. The fact that we've got Route 14, the Beltline going right by there, I wonder if there might be a chance for us to raise our hand and say, hey, we'd willingly host one here, or put something like that, might be able to access some funds, or at least put some funds alongside whatever we could do. To Kathy's point about it being, very visible, I think a large part of this sustainability plan, I mean, you talk about engagement, but a large part about it is getting people to believe and live it. You know, that's partly why I was asking, you know, which covenant or HOA has a thing against solar panels, right? Just getting people to kind of like, oh yeah, that's what we do in the good neighbor city, right? It's a sustainable kind of mindset or whatever else. And having a high visibility point like that, where we show a charging station, would be great. Getting tourism involved. You know, you see all these articles right now in various newspapers around, I took my Tesla and I tried to drive across the country, and, you know, where could I stop and where did I have a great time? You could have a charging station right there that a road tripper could stop off at. They'll come into downtown, have a meal, you know, say, oh, look at this cute little downtown we didn't know existed before. So I think it actually could be a really great project for the CDA plus tourism, for example, and sustainability committee to do something like that, and use that bit of land that otherwise isn't there, and its proximity to the fire station and the medical emergency terminal as well. If that's where we decide to put in the city charging station for the city fleet, that would seem to make sense, right? You've got two of the emergency services right there. You could put city charging. Inevitably, you know, then if you're talking to contractors to come in and put in the required electrical work, you're like, yeah, we're going to put up, you know, 2 or 3 charging stations here for cars, but it's also going to have the city fleet along there as well. You could combine all of that. So yeah, I think this is a great idea and one that we should pick up and run with.
So the corner of University and Parmenter, so you're talking about that, that is not owned by the city. We are still litigating with that person who owns it, and he actually, we had won that situation until now. Now he has, I think he's petitioning, or it is gone to the Supreme Court. So we, is that the lot you're talking about, Abby?
Yeah, yes, the northwest corner.
No, we don't
Yeah,
own it. That's still owned by that person who owned the rest of it. That's not owned by the city. As far as I know, it's we are still litigating with Mr. Ling, and that's his property. We were thinking of buying it, but you know, we haven't really reached at any agreement on that part yet. So, but we have that parking lot, you know, that we do own. So,
Right.
anyway,
There's
this is
ample space in that parking lot, University Avenue parking lot.
yeah. That is ours, and there we should start the conversation with the fire company as well as the EMS if we want to go somewhere with that. So I have few comments. One is that you know, I talked to Kelly that nearly all our street lights, they are still not LED, and and they're owned by MG&E. So today we had a meeting of the Dane County Cities and Village Association, and I just assumed that most of the cities and villages, they are provided by MG&E. And I found out, for example, you know, that really isn't the case. Even McFarland and Windsor and Sun Prairie got their own utility. So in any case, Madison and Middleton, they are MG&E. So I did talk to Kelly, and I think Abby probably knows that too. So if we can convert our traffic, all of those lights on our common and our roads to LED, that's going to make a, you know, big dent right to begin with, and also would provide a lot of visibility and publicity. So in any case, I will talk more to Abby and Kelly and see if we can work with MG&E and make that happen. So so that will be one thing. And I already mentioned that you know, you remember we passed that resolution, we will have a 100% renewable clean energy by 2035, but we did not put any timeline or any plans in place. So I think if we have some milestones and, you know, they will make a difference. It's great to have a plan, but when you have some definitive, milestone that does make a difference. So I think that would be something which we need to do. I think overall it looks very good. So, okay, any other questions or comments on the sustainable city plan? So I think we have provided plenty for the sustainability committee to work on.
Mayor, I just pulled up a link that Kari sent me.
Yeah.
This shows, this is something that Dane Climate Action has put together. Kari, I did not know that this resource existed, so thank you so much for sending this along. But this shows,
Google.
yeah,
I didn't
good work.
either. It's amazing.
I'm not sure if Kelly knows about this. I'm excited to share this with her. So this shows the covenants in our community that have some restrictions on solar energy. So you can see the Hidden Oaks neighborhood is subject to aesthetic restrictions, the same as Middleton Hills. This is actually in the town. And then there are some neighborhoods, including North Lake, where permission is required. And then there are other neighborhoods that are shown in red where solar is prohibited. I'm actually shocked to see the community of Bishop's Bay here, because that was rezoned to planned development district. And my understanding, and I want to look into this now that you shared this, my understanding is that for the last, I don't know, 10 to 15 years, we have been requiring those prohibitions to be stricken from properties where we're rezoning to planned development district. And that includes not only restrictions on renewable energy, but also things like clotheslines and other things that are really sustainability oriented. But many times neighborhood associations think that they aren't attractive and they decide to restrict them. So I want to look into that one and some of these others a little bit more, but thanks for sharing this.
That's excellent. Thank you, Kari, and thank you, Abby. Anything else? Any other quick comments? We don't need any motion on this one, right? It's just providing the input, right?
Yeah, so what I wrote down, so I have Kieran's comments, the other items that I heard from you all, and please jump in if there's anything that I missed here in my summary. I heard that timelines will help to create a path forward to achieve the goals. There needs to be more education around composting. Incentives need to be clarified. The city doesn't have a lot of leeway to provide incentives unless we have grant funding or tax increment financing or other opportunities. We should enhance the electric vehicle charging stations, especially in the downtown, and including taking a look at the fire station parking lot. We should see if the sustainability committee is able to provide costs or at least cost ranges for many of the items that are included here. There was a question about the energy benchmarking requirement for city buildings and what kinds of costs would be associated with that. The idea that has been discussed previously by the CDA to use the tourism trolley as a collector system or a similar trolley type system. And also taking a look at if there is additional city-owned property or if the city proceeds to acquire additional property near University and Parmenter, that would be a good location for EV charging because of the visibility.
Yeah, you got it. Thank you.
I guess I also should add other electric modes of transportation, including scooters or bikes.
So Abby, I had a question, and maybe this is just an educational piece for me. And I didn't see it when I read through that document, and I'll bet I did read through it kind of quickly. What does it look like in terms of when those batteries are depleted? So for your electric vehicles, electric scooters, there is that one piece of how do you get rid of the batteries? And that to me is another environmental hazard that I've just never seen addressed anywhere else. Is that a question? Because as you move to that, you still have waste that's generated.
Yeah, I don't think it was specifically addressed in the plan. I could pass that along as a comment to the committee. I know that they have had discussions about that, and I'm sure that they have a path forward for that, but I don't know what their game plan is. So we can include that as a comment as well.
And Belinda, you are right on target. That's a global issue. And there are a lot of companies working on it. And so, you know, I get this, well, there are other sources too, MIT Technology Magazine regularly. And so they are looking at other solutions, but right now the solar energy system which we have, it has a lot of issues. So you're right on target.
Yeah, I just didn't want to create a new problem,
Katie?
try to take care of an old problem.
Yeah, I remember asking about this in a sustainability meeting, and I kind of got clapped down because they said, no, they kind of never wear out. And I don't think I agree with that, but the sustainability experts on the committee were definitely not as worried about that as they were about changing away from carbon. And so I think we need some more elaborate answers on that. So yeah. Abby, I just want to quickly verify, when you talk about scooters, are you talking about like small little motorcycles, or like a something you ride around Italy, or the standing up scooters?
The standing up ones were the ones that Mayor Brar had a contact from. It's the Bird Company, where you kind of pick them up where they're available, and then you leave them where you want to leave them. And then there's a little app that you can download on your phone so you can find out where they're located. There have been issues with safety because they're oftentimes used by travelers who don't have a helmet with them. So people are riding them without a helmet. That's one issue. And then there also have been some issues with them being, you know, tossed around, left on sidewalks, things like that. I think that there's a possibility. I've seen a lot more people already in Middleton. I saw 3 young women riding them on a sidewalk on Elmwood Avenue earlier today. So I think that there's an option there for us to take a look at, but our staff felt that it would be beneficial to collaborate with our other peer communities and make sure that we're all handling them similarly.
Yeah, just from in a couple of instances where I've had experience, I haven't ridden one, but when I was in Memphis this spring, they were kind of left all over the sidewalk for people to trip on, and they're not supposed to be ridden on sidewalks. And I think that it gets to be kind of confusing for people and maddening for people who are trying to walk. And then lastly, people who use bike paths hate them. So just noting, I don't want to like squash the progress of, you know, getting away from cars, but we have to be careful about which modes we choose to promote.
They all come with issues. And Katie, to just answer your question quickly, I'm not an expert on recycling the solar panels. Number one, they do have a life cycle. They don't last forever.
Well,
And
I totally agree with you. And I was, asking the sustainability committee about these, you know, electric cars. What happens? These batteries are like the size of the lower undercarriage of the whole car, correct?
Yeah, and that's a big issue. And there are so many companies working on just that. And, you know, I guess I don't think the city of Middleton is in a situation to address that. So, but that's a good point. Next one is, you're done, Katie, or you have some more points?
Done.
Okay, next one is Kari and then Karen.
I just wanted to echo a lot of what Katie said, places I've traveled. Like, I was so excited the first few times I saw scooters, and I think, Belinda, like maybe different cities manage them differently, but you know, like I have an 89-year-old mom who uses a walker to get around, and like, what is she gonna do when somebody just drops their scooter in the middle of the sidewalk? So before we moved ahead, I just would, you know, encourage communication with other communities and finding a path to success. And it also really highlights that we have streets for cars, we have not really bikes, and we have sidewalks for people who are walking, and we don't really have like that third mode for non-car, not bike transportation built into our infrastructure. And I don't know that we have an answer to that.
I have the
Excellent.
answer, Carrie. I have the answer. We got 40-foot wide streets. There's loads of room for that extra lane. So I think I just want to take Belinda's comment in the sense of Belinda, which was like, hey, there are many options out there. Let's look at some other options, right? Not necessarily that scooters are the be all and end all, because I've seen cities where exactly the same issue. San Diego, they're all everywhere, and it can be a pain. But if they're managed properly, maybe it's docking station to docking station, like you do with bikes, that might be a better way of going about it. But I'm afraid, Abby, I just needed to raise my bike advocate hand for a second on your comment on helmets, in case everyone thinks I'm going to veer into crazy bike guy territory. But we should recognize that the only reason the helmet is needed is because the car is right there too, right? You go to Amsterdam, you go to Copenhagen, nobody is wearing a helmet. 40% of journeys in the city of Copenhagen are done by bicycle, okay? So just again, a recognition that back to, what we can observe from other cities. So I was in Seattle just 2 weeks ago, and what we're talking about on Elmwood Avenue around, what we could come up with for kind of temporary measures for segregating a bike lane or narrowing the street, temporary planters, for example. They had great examples of where they were using just very cheap and easy planters full of pretty flowers as essentially traffic separation devices to segregate a bike path. They had molded plastic bits which they dropped onto the corners of intersections. So where we have a nice 1960s design for the driver, car can go around the corner super fast. They just basically fill out a corner with a molded plastic insert, drop it down. And now all of a sudden you've got a bike and pedestrian friendly intersection where cars need to slow down to take the corner, and there's room for a pedestrian to stand and look both ways. So there's lots of things that we could do. But yes, I just needed to raise my hand on the helmet comment. All right. I'm
Excellent.
done.
We need a cultural change. So it will take time, and I guess that's how it is. So Kari, you still have your hand up? You have more comments? Okay. Abby, you think you have enough input now?
Yep, I'll prepare this in a memo and an attachment to send it back to the Sustainability Committee.
Okay, so we are on to agenda item number 2, report from Art Walk Middleton Arts Committee.
Yes, so I will take that. I just wanted to take the opportunity to just briefly share some feedback that we got from the artists that participated in the Art Walk. So the Art Walk was a one-day event. It was held on Saturday, May 14th for a 6-hour period of time. I'm going to try to show my slides. Okay. Yeah, just really quickly, we had a really phenomenal event. It was a big change from the way that we had held the Art Walk previously, where we were working with individual businesses and matching artists with businesses. We instead decided to close down a portion of Terrace Avenue near Capitol Brewery for the Art Walk, and we asked artists to bring tents. We largely did this because the Stonehorse Screen is under construction, but also because when our arts committee was planning and organizing the event, we didn't know where things would be with the pandemic. And so we thought it was safer to plan an outdoor only event. And it worked out really well. And it turns out that this format was strongly preferred by the artists that worked on the event. And so it probably is going to be the path going forward for future events. We had some volunteers, 3 volunteers from the arts committee that I want to give a shout out to: Michelle Phillips, Megan McCombs, and Erin Summers, who had an extremely heavy lift in organizing the event, to the point where a couple of them are like, okay, it was really fun, but I can't give that much time to it next year because I also have a job. So we're lucky that we now have Matt Stroh-Snyder on board in a part-time capacity, because this is an event that is in the downtown that he could assist with in the future. And we just need to come up with ways where we can kind of spread it out amongst several volunteers instead of relying on just a key group of 3 people. but it really was a wonderful event. I've included some photographs. Many of these were taken by Katie, who is our volunteer photographer. Thank you, Katie, for doing that. And then I wanted to share some survey results that we got back from the artists. So we sent out 2 surveys. One was to the artists that participated by showing and selling their work within a tent space. And then the second survey we did was a survey just to the demo artists. The difference being the demo artists were artists that our committee sought out to do a demonstration at the event. They were mostly paid to be there. And so we wanted to get feedback from each of the 2 different parties to see what they thought. Overall, the artists were pretty happy with the event. We got 4.7 out of 5 stars, and this is from 18 of the artists who responded to the survey. We were shocked and delighted by the number of items that were sold at the booths, because a big part of this event is to support local artists and to help them make a living wage from their work. And so we included a category of 0 to 1 because we knew that there were many artists showing there that had more expensive original works. And so we were concerned that there may be somebody that only sold 1 piece, but if it was a $500 piece, then maybe it made it worth their while. But it turned out that everyone fit into one of the higher categories. So the majority of artists participating, or the majority of the responses, I should say, had sold between 11 and 25 pieces of art. So we thought that was phenomenal. We had a question in there about whether they liked the format with outdoor or they preferred the individual businesses. And as you can see, 70% of the responding artists preferred the outdoor festival. We asked artists if they would recommend any adjustments to the time period of 6 hours, and we failed to include an option here where we said no change. And so that's why you see that there are 80% of the respondents said other, but most of those were people who said no change. We like it being a 1-day event and we like it being a 6-hour event. I did include a word cloud here from the responses. So you can see like 2-day did show up quite a bit. So the idea was, maybe I would be willing to do it for 2 days if I've already spent all the time and the effort to set up my tent, but these parameters would need to be put in place. For example, Art Fair on the square downtown has a 2-day event, but they have security that stays with the tents overnight. So that would be an additional cost. And then we asked the artist if they would participate in future events. 100% said yes, they would. And then we asked this question about whether they had previously been to downtown Middleton. And interestingly, about 15% had never been to downtown Middleton before. So it was kind of good to just even have exposure for the downtown to the artists who were coming in. And we can only assume that some of the attendees, it may have been their first time visiting our downtown as well. I included a word cloud for this too, because there was a question about any other feedback that they may want to provide. And we had a lot of people that just said, thank you. Thanks to all the people who helped to organize it. But then we also had some comments about there was adequate parking for the event. So that was good. But there was some feedback that we needed to do a little bit better job of identifying to the public that we're attending where the parking is and maybe flagging it more for people in advance, because we had use of Steve Cohen's parking lot. So that's like 300 parking spaces. But I was driving through that parking lot during the day and counting cars, and I don't think I ever saw more than like 30 or 40 cars at a time. And then we had a separate survey for demo artists. The demo artists had a slightly lower rating than the artists who were not paid to attend the event. So that was kind of interesting, but we think that it was because we had kind of a last minute decision that we made with the demo artists that they could also show and sell their work. We sort of struggled with that because we were like, well, we're paying them to attend already and to paint or to blow glass or whatever it may be. But then we started getting some questions about a week prior to the event about whether they could also show and sell. And we thought about it and we were like, that makes a lot of sense to allow them to also do that. but we didn't really, because the decision was made so last minute, we didn't do a very good job of promoting the demo artists showing and selling work. And also we didn't give the demo artists enough time to know that they could bring things and set up and display items as well. So I think that that was part of it. We asked them how many items were sold at their booth. 2 to 10 was 60% of the responses. So that we only had 5 demo artists that responded to the survey. All of them 100% preferred an outdoor event, which makes a lot of sense because they needed more space to display. And then we asked them the same question about recommended adjustments. We had a little bit more of a varied response to that. And then 100% of the artists said that they would participate in the event again. They all were more familiar with downtown Middleton. And then because we had so few, I just went ahead and included all of their comments. This one I thought provided some good specificity about we needed more signage, identifying the demo artists, we needed to provide tents for them. And we need to give people a little bit more heads up about, you know, what the booth fees are, if they apply, and then do a little bit more social media. We had at least one demo artist in particular who has a wonderful social media presence, but because we weren't sure if we were going to allow them to show and sell, I think that we could have made at least that person much more happy if we had a more vibrant social media presence, tagged them, allowed them to share our information. So I think those are some opportunities for us next year. And I'm going to be working with Matt over the next month or so to try to at least get the date set up for next year and try to like sketch out a plan for how we'll move forward.
So I just want to let you know, I did go to this event and I was very impressed. I talked to many of them and they were also very happy. So then I had a conversation with some of the people who actually went there and they were also very pleased. So.
Great.
Any other comments from any of, okay, Kathy?
Yeah, Abby, did you get any feedback from the food trucks, how that went with for them?
That's a good question, Kathy. I don't recall. I bet Michelle Phillips, who handled Michelle Phillips and Meg McCombs worked on organizing the food trucks, so they might have more specifics. There were a couple of things. One is that at least one of the food truck had a minimum sales requirement. So if they didn't meet their minimum, then we had to pay them to participate in the event, but they met their minimum. So I know that they did okay in that regard. There was an incident with some damage to one of the food trucks. Unfortunately, the tap pavilion, they had a mechanical piece of equipment sticking up on the top of the truck, and it hit the top of the pavilion, which caused quite a bit of damage to their trucks. So I would be willing to bet that they probably weren't super happy, but it was, you know, it wasn't something that we were at fault with. But I can check back and see if there's any more specific feedback from the food trucks that we could then share via email to the committee. And that might also help us as we look to schedule more events. I know that's one thing that Matt is really interested in doing, is trying to have like a food truck night in downtown. And I talked to him about it today, and we were thinking that, you know, maybe it makes sense to do it on a Monday night when many of the restaurants in downtown are closed, and we could have it at the brewery or something like that. That's just an early thought that we were having, but I'll get the feedback on the food trucks and I'll share it with you all, and then also provide it to Matt so that he'll be aware of that.
Any other questions or comments? So I just wanted to say, Abby, I was in Spring Green. This was Kiwanis governor's meeting there. And so they had this art show there as well. So, but I guess they probably have been doing it for a long, long time. So, you know, maybe we can learn something from, well, not necessarily learn, maybe it doesn't hurt to communicate with them. So it was in the downtown and quite a bit larger than ours, but I think there may have been going on for a long time. So,
Yeah, we'll
okay.
check that out.
Any other? Yeah, it was pretty impressive. So I just, was there only for a few hours and decided to go there. So any other questions or comments for the art walk? Otherwise, we move on to item number 3, which is the Make Music Middleton, Downtown Middleton Business Association. So do we have somebody, or maybe you're going to present it?
I am going to present it on behalf of Andrea. She sent this out just as a brief email summary, and I thought, you know, given the investment of the CDA, in this case, it was $350 to set up the website. I told her I thought that what she had put together would suffice for the report back to the CDA, but if there's any additional information that you want, please just let me know, and I can work with Andrea to make sure we get all of that info to you. We kind of went small. We started really small because it was the city's first year participating in Make Music Day. We had a goal of trying to get 5 venues signed up, and we really organized this in a pretty short amount of time with very little assistance. So it was pretty minimal to start. And unfortunately, we ended up on, you know, one of the hottest days of the year. It was miserably hot that day. We had Matt out trying to set up tents at the last minute to at least give some cover to some of the musicians that were performing. And the tents that we had kind of weren't the best. We found them in a storage closet and they were collecting dust, and we realized that they were collecting dust for a reason, because they just did not work. It was actually also very windy, which is kind of rare for it to be that hot, but it was really windy and it was causing problems with the tents. So the tents didn't work out. There were a couple of other things that didn't work out in our favor. One of them, from the DMBA's perspective, is the road closure in front of Middleton Center. I think that if we would have had a little bit more advanced notice that that was happening, we probably could have harnessed that as a positive to allow people to spill over in the street. So that was one thing. We received some free instruments. So we got drumsticks, mallets, and we also got harmonicas that were included as part of our subscription to the website. And we have many of those left over still, at least the mallets and the drumsticks, because we didn't get enough attendance at those events to hand them out. One of the things that went really well is that Inspiring Hope, which is on University Avenue, they were able to move their program indoors, and because they had air conditioning, they had a full house. A lot of people ended up moving over to their facility, and I think they did a really nice job organizing that. We had some really cool things, like we had a 7-year-old who played violin with her mother and grandmother, which I think is just speaks to like kind of exactly what we wanted to happen with this event. We wanted to not only be supporting professional musicians, but we wanted members of our community to be able to come out and make music. So I think that worked out really, really well. We had over 20 people show up for harmonicas. So that was really cool. And we had a local harmonica teacher who led the session. He had already participated in 2 others in Madison, so that was pretty cool that he was willing to give his time that way. We didn't really have any funding to pay musicians, so these were people who just volunteered and were willing to set up and do it. So that's maybe something we'd want to consider, because I think that that is part of kind of our goal here too, is to try to support musicians. And you know, I think that they should be paid for their work and their performances. And then Andrea just included down here, thanks to several people who helped out, including our tourism department, our Chamber of Commerce, who helped promote it, Holly and Peter with T-Wall at Middleton Center, Leslie Raytano, who helped organize the event, and also Matt Van Nest for handling behind the scenes details. So, and thanks to the CDA. for the funding to support the website and getting us linked up with the national team. We had, I mean, that $350 was stretched very far. It hooked us up with several meetings with Matt Fox from the national team who helped answer questions that we had. It got us on the website. And then it got us all of the free musical equipment. So that was really, really awesome. Thank you.
Any questions for Abby? I don't see any raised hands. I missed it. I don't know what I was doing, but that's how it is. So
You were
so we are on
probably
to
at
item
city
number 4.
meetings like me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tuesday.
So discussion of music at the tap, fall fun at the Stonehorse Green.
Yeah, and I just left this on the agenda because I had asked at the last meeting if you wanted me to take it off the agenda, and it sounded like you wanted me to keep it on. I have given over that listing of musicians to Matt now. Matt and I met for a couple hours today, and we went over a lot of the ideas that the CDA has had in the past. He's apologizing that he wasn't able to attend tonight. He is working at his other job. And because of when he started, he wasn't able to get it on his calendar in time. But he's going to be attending the next meeting. He's excited about working directly with the CDA to schedule music and get things on the calendar for the Stonehorse Green.
Yeah, and I think, I think it will be great to line up that program and then keep on expanding. So I think that would be wonderful. Kathy?
Yeah, Abby, I was just wondering, now, the Terrace Avenue Pavilion, the Market Arcade, there was supposed to be a 5-person advisory panel for that. Well, Matt, can we reconstitute that so that the events that can start happening there and Matt could be involved in that? I know that
I
there are
love that.
2 representatives from the brewery, and then he would be one, and we thought like the DMBA and, you know, but there's a 5-person panel that's supposed to be working to have events there.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great idea, Kathy. I hadn't even, I mean, aside from talking to him about the amenity, I hadn't talked to him about the advisory group at all. So that's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Any other questions or comments? I don't see any raised hands. Anything else which anybody
All right.
has?
I'll go, Kat.
Oh, go ahead, Karen.
Just an update on the progress on Stonehorse Green, because I missed the last meeting. Maybe it was talked about, but you know, where are we at in the cycle of things? You know, there's always ups and downs, but how's it looking?
Yep. So for now, we are on schedule and we are on budget.
Awesome.
We hope that that continues. You know, there's always unforeseen circumstances. So I just keep my fingers crossed every day that nothing surprising arises. We did have some pretty crappy weather at the beginning of the season to contend with, a lot of rain. And then we had the heat, but the crew kept working even during the heat. So far we're on schedule. They started the masonry today. So they expect the masons will be on site for 2 weeks. And I think that these are going to be the 2 weeks where it actually starts to look like something, because the building will go up and we'll get to see all of that action happening. We still anticipate that we're going to complete the project by the end of August. Matt and I are meeting with the Art and Literature Laboratory later this week to go over our plans for what we hope to be the opening weekend event, which is September 9th and 10th. So yeah, I mean, things are going pretty much as smoothly as you could expect for a construction project like this.
Good.
And we are continuing to have the bi-weekly meetings. Actually, it's the first and the third Monday of each month at Grace Coffee in the morning. And that's been really nice for coordination with Andrea, who then can coordinate with the DMBA. And we have had a couple of other business representatives that have attended. We had some folks coming over from One Community Bank. Kathy comes to all of those meetings. We have our construction project lead from Joe Daniels, and then Jared Vincent from Psyche Design. And then Laura Ports from the tourism department also represents the city. So that's been really nice for coordination.
Good, glad to hear it. All right. And I'm sure there's been one or two complaints about someone who couldn't park right outside Village Green when they wanted to go there. So I'll counter that with saying, I love whenever I see the streets closed down either side of it. I think it's getting people used to the idea of not driving right through our downtown.
And I agree with you. I hope someday we can actually close that. So now, Kari and Karen, you have met our new city administrator, Brian Gatto, right? He's on the call. Brian, if you want to say hello, so that would be a good thing for a couple of folks who may not know you.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I was on the last month's meeting, so I might have met most of you there. If I didn't, I'm Brian Gatto. Been here, 6 or so weeks now, on the end of month number 2. But I'm happy to be here. I previously came from the city of Monona, where I was the administrator and economic development director there. So worked with CDAs for a number of years now in a number of different positions in different communities. So I'm excited to help Abby any way I can with the CDA here, amongst other things, obviously. But nice to meet all of you again.
Thank you, Brian. Does anybody, okay, Kari, you have some,
I don't know, depending, I don't know if this would be a CDA thing or not, but you know, the hot thing on Nextdoor is, where is the Trader Joe's gonna go? And is there anything, anything that the CDA could do to encourage a more pedestrian friendly site in Middleton, if Middleton is indeed under consideration for the supposedly upcoming West Side Trader Joe's?
So I didn't know about that. So Abby, is that going to go to the Greenway station, or where is it going?
I know that Greenway Station was working on recruiting them, but I haven't heard anything concrete about whether they've been successful or not.
Okay.
But we are getting the Van Gogh exhibit.
Yes, we are.
Everybody
I
should
totally
go.
want for that.
It's
I
so
can't
good. I went to the Milwaukee one and I had low expectations and was bowled over.
Yes, exactly.
Where is it going to be, Abby?
It's going into the former DSW shoe store space. DSW, I'm pretty sure that's where it's going. DSW moved, or they are moving down to what used to be Orvis. And so I think that that's where the Van Gogh exhibit is going, into that big empty space. And they're advertising it as Madison, but it's not in Madison. It's actually here in Middleton. And Mari from our tourism department has been doing a lot to promote it.
That's excellent.
Oh, can you imagine the traffic that's going to bring to Middleton and Greenway? Wow.
Oh,
When-
that's great. That's great.
When's the ETA?
That's wonderful.
Is it
So
November?
October, November. It's later this fall, right, Kari? Do you know?
I think they open in November and close sometime at the end of January, maybe.
Oh, that's going to be so nice when the weather's bad to go in there. And oh, excellent. I'm excited. Thanks for that.
Okay, any other questions or comments or anything which you want to share? Otherwise, need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
okay.
Whoever.
Any, all those in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Anyone opposed? So we are adjourned. And thank you. I think this was very productive. A lot of input on various things.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you.
Bye now.
Happy
Bye,
4th,
everybody.
everybody.